Welcome to Week 7 of Inside the Zone here with Justin Kenny of Optimum Performance Sports. We're talking conference races really getting down to the nitty-gritty. I say that, and a lot of conference races, they feel like they're decided at this point. I'm not sure how much we learned from last week because Friday was crazy, and then Saturday was crazy if you played on Saturday. But we've got some football to talk about this coming Friday night. It starts in the SAC. Homestead is the team to beat. They've got wins over Snyder. They've got wins over Dwenger. If they can complete the trifecta against Carroll, mathematically they wouldn't have won the SAC, but essentially they would have. Yeah. How do you look at this game on Friday night between Homestead and Carroll as it's SAC rivalry week?
Well, can we see if Carroll can hang? Carroll's played some pretty good football. Jeffrey Becker has been very good throughout the season. But Homestead, you feel like, man, they could effectively wrap it up this week with Wayne and South, the final 2 games of the season for Homestead Spartans. So if they continue to do what they do, took care of business last week at Northside in a lightning-delayed game. So keep on keeping on. I think the important thing, for Carroll to have a shot in this game is to limit Braden Hardwick. Easier said than done, though.
Yeah, when you take a look at what Homestead's been able to do offensively, I was kind of racking my brain over the weekend to see who the MVP of Homestead would be, just because they have so many candidates. But Luke Goody's numbers are really impressive. He threw his first interception of the season this past week. He's got 1,500 yards passing, 63% completion percentage. His rating is high. 17 touchdowns, I believe, to 1 pick.
Yeah.
The guy's been fantastic, and he kind of makes that offense go. He's got a lot of weapons that also make him look good. How do you slow down what Luke Goody and what this offense can do if you're Carroll? Because although they do have Jeffrey Becker, whose numbers are quite good as well, I imagine you don't want Homestead to put up 40 or 50 on you.
I think the key is trying to get a push along that offensive front, but that's a problem that everybody has had. Nobody's been able to do it. We've seen Homestead teams in the past been able to pass pretty well, but couldn't run the football worth a lick. And as good as Braden Hardwick is, it's not like they didn't have capable running backs in those years. They just didn't have an offensive front. So I think those guys, when we're looking for stars, MVPs, so to speak, of Homestead, I think you look at that offensive front because they've been able to open holes for Braden Hardwick, protect Luke Goody, and that's made everything in the offense go.
And to me, the funny thing about that is, Porter Haught is now a freshman down at Ball State. He's the best offensive lineman I think Homestead's had in the last 10 years. He graduates, yet maybe as a unit, they're playing some of their best football that we've seen in a long time. Yeah,
and it was a lot of new faces, too, up front. So that was kind of a question mark for Chad Zolman going into the season was how is that offensive line going to gel? I'd say it's gelled pretty good.
Okay, so as I mentioned, it's SAC rivalry week. You got Luers at Dwenger. Now, Dwenger will go in as a heavy favorite in this game. But Luers, we keep waiting for them to flip the switch, and maybe it's going to be in the postseason. But this is a game to me that's really critical in that they don't necessarily have to win, but they have to show some progress after losing a 1-point game at Northrop last week. They're 1-5. You're not going to just be able to flip the switch when the postseason comes. I know they're in 2A, but they really have to at least show that they can hang with some of these teams, and I think it starts this week because you've got Snyder still left on the schedule as well for them.
Yeah, it's more, I think, survival. I think they really need to get through Dwenger without suffering any serious injuries, Snyder without suffering any serious injuries because they're incredibly thin. They showed some fight last week against Northrop before giving up that late field goal to lose. I think they're making progress. Unfortunately, the margin for error for Bishop Luers is incredibly thin because not only do they not have a deep roster, they don't have those traditional playmakers that we're used to Bishop Luers having where, okay, when in doubt, we're just going to get the ball to Jordan Presley or Austin Mack or whoever these guys. They don't have those guys. So it's more difficult for that offense to get going because it doesn't have the depth. It doesn't have the guys that can just get the ball in space and run. And it's really hampered that offense all season long.
North side, south side. This is looking to be a much better game than we thought maybe 3 weeks ago. North side obviously has improved. Deuce Taylor's helped that offense start to score some points. And south side played pretty well. I know the conditions were somewhat adverse in terms of the weather and everything, but played pretty well against Carroll, especially in the first half this past week. And then obviously, earned that win, put up over 40 points against Wayne. So they're trending in the right direction. North side's trending in the right direction. And you kind of throw out the records when you come to the totem pole game.
Well, I think the big question in this one is Deuce Taylor is back at quarterback or not. You didn't play last week. They played a freshman, Brayshawn Bassett, at quarterback for the Legends against Homestead. Serviceable. Alex Holiday Robinson was the guy that made that offense go, ran for almost 200 yards against Homestead, which was pretty impressive. I think a better chance for South to hang around is if Deuce Taylor's not back. That offensive north side is completely different when Deuce Taylor's behind center.
Snyder at Northrop. This is a game that might be more competitive than people think. Northrop
4-2.
4-2 with a win against Lures last week. And you take a look at they can really run the football. But what do you like about Northrop heading into the Snyder game? What does Snyder have to do well? I know Snyder will be an overwhelming favorite on paper, but this is a Northrop team that may put up a bigger fight than we've seen in years past.
Yeah, as good as they run the football with Jeremiah Green and that cadre of running backs, they almost have to because the quarterback position has been so inconsistent all season long.
Did you say cadre?
Cadre.
Oh, we're using $10 words
We
today.
are.
Okay, I'll get off the thesaurus
I'm done
for the
now.
next break.
So, what was I saying? I don't even know.
You were saying how well
you called
Northrop's
me
running
out.
the football because they are.
They are, and they almost have to because of the inconsistency at quarterback. So, Snyder, you're just shutting down the run game. I think you can really make Northrop one-dimensional. So, 4-2, Northrop is beating the teams that on paper they should beat, which we haven't been able to say for a long time. So, I don't think they can match up with Snyder, but still kudos for Northrop for beating the teams they should beat on their schedule.
And we've talked about, there's kind of the big four that have separated themselves in the SAC. I think Northrop's right there as the fifth, maybe the fifth best team. And I don't know, it's been a long time since we said Northrop is right in, the middle and maybe right under the leaders in this conference. So got things going in the right direction, does Coach Dorff.
Yeah, and it feels like every year in the preseason we go, okay, this is the year that Northrop takes a step forward. No, maybe it's next year. Maybe it's next year. This year you can definitely say they've taken a step forward.
Yeah, I like Quaylen Pettis at the receiver position as well. Big athlete, good guy. I've seen him make a couple of plays in person this year. He, when they do throw it, and they do throw it effectively, he's the guy that kind of makes things go in that passing game. Let's talk about the Northeast 8 because East Noble, we thought, they were probably going to win down at Norwell last week, and I don't know how much you glean from it because of the way the weather set up, and the game started late, and it was rainy, and it was crappy, but pretty definitive win, 35-0 at Norwell. This is their conference going forward, and they have Columbia City this week. I think it's an upset special. I don't know that Columbia City can do it, especially after last week, but this is a game you have to look at and make sure if you're East Noble, there's no letdown and you're not overlooking a good Columbia City team. Yeah,
and this was the worry with Columbia City when they got off to a hot start is, man, they're backloaded with games, right? So DeKalb comes in and they beat them. Then last week they go to New Haven that's playing better football and they lose. Now you have to have East Noble coming to town. So if you're Columbia City, you're just trying to get off this skid, right? And now you have the Knights coming to town that have just dominated everybody in the conference. So we've waited for a week where East Noble maybe is looking ahead, but they haven't. They've just the business-like approach. They take care of business each and every week against these conference foes. I think Columbia City needs a lot to go right on Friday to have a shot.
And then you got also in this conference, Norwell at DeKalb. DeKalb is 5-1, 3-1 in conference. It's a game that DeKalb has to win and will be favored to win, I'm sure, on Friday night. But what have you liked from DeKalb? Because they went in, beat Huntington North in a game that was delayed 2+ hours at Craig Baum last week. And, they seem to have a little bit of everything. They've got some defense. They got a quarterback that can throw it. They got a couple of running backs. They got a big offensive line. I mean, they have a lot of pieces that you like, and they can hang around and maybe if East Noble trips up, earn a share of that conference title. Yeah,
guys like Jace Griffith having great games defensively. Last had 5 sacks, I think, on Friday, which is just crazy.
That's not terrible.
That's pretty decent. So, DeKalb is one of those teams that just is flying under the radar. There's a lot of good teams overall in the Northeast 8. We just kind of look at East Noble and say, well, they're far and above everybody else. So DeKalb is there. I think Norwell's played good football. Columbia City has played good football. Huntington North is improving as a program. Leo, I think we just wrote off because they couldn't compete with East Noble. DeKalb is 5-1. Flying under the radar, feels like maybe it has a shot to surprise potentially in a sectional. They just want to continue to get better the final third of the season.
Let's move to the ACAC where things became a lot more clear.
They did.
This past Friday. Your take on the way that South Adams not only was able to beat Adams Central, but the fashion in which, I don't want to say dominated, but they dominated a lot of facets of the game.
I wasn't altogether surprised. I felt like this was a game that South Adams could win by double digits. I don't think I would have said 28. But I think once again they showcase that they're not just the best team in the ACAC. I think you could seriously put this South Adams team in a Northeast 8, in the SAC, and not compete with the upper echelon teams, but in the bottom third, knock off some teams, or at least give some teams a run for their money. And we couldn't say that even about Adams Central the last couple of years. I mean, this is a special group at South Adams. Grant Mosier doesn't want to hear it. He just wants to win the ACAC. But this team has the firepower, the experience, the talent to get to the state championship game.
I was going to say, I was looking through the other teams in 1A that are state title contenders. Indianapolis Lutheran has been number one all season long. They're 5-0. They play a pretty tough schedule. Yeah. They just beat Cecina, and they've beaten Beech Grove, they've beaten Ritter. That's a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah. Yes.
To me, those are the two top teams, South Adams and Indianapolis Lutheran. What makes you think that South Adams can win a state title and beat a team like Lutheran when it comes down to it?
And they won't meet till the state title game, correct? Because you never know where the line is drawn.
I believe that is the case.
In Indianapolis. So the issue with South Adams matching up with them is how they can play that spread, and they can spread you out with 4 and 5 wide formations. And not a lot of teams in 1A have the personnel, particularly defensively, to identify and defend all those guys. Because you have a lot of guys going both ways. And some of them are taking defense off, and you're putting your best players on offense, and they'll get a rest defensively. It's very, very difficult for a team that dresses 40 kids to account for all that talent on the field at one time. And James Arnold, only a junior, already broken the all-time passing record in South Adams, continues to put up huge numbers each and every week. I mean, we kind of take it for granted because we feel, okay, South Adams is here, the rest of the conference is here. But the eye-popping numbers that he is putting up are just insane. That team has yet to give up a single sack through 6 games this season.
What is it? Because they have some good seniors, but really a lot of the stars, if you will, are juniors.
Right.
Which would scare me going forward if you're 1A. Like, if they don't get it, I don't want to put this year in the rear view and say it's a done deal. But, like, next year, they could be really scary.
I know, right?
I mean, like you got Somerset's a junior, Drew Stutzman's a junior,
Nick Miller,
a junior, Nick Miller's a junior. Nick Miller's already a beast on that level.
I mean, Aiden Warner's only a sophomore.
That's true.
I mean, this team is loaded. It's a class, that junior class that Grant Mosier's been excited for quite some time, and it's different than what we have in the city, right? Because when you see these kids coming up 6th, 7th, 8th grade, you know exactly where they're going. So Grant Mosier is getting excited 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Hey, all these kids are coming. And run the same thing, come into the program, really, down through the junior high levels, running the same schemes. It's paying off. Not a lot of teams in 1A are going to come out of a huddle and go 5 wide and make defenses play against that. South Adams does it.
Here's what I'm wondering geographically is how is it possible that Adams Central, 9.5 miles north, has all these players, has been really good the past few years, and has replaced guys, which is the most important thing, and then South Adams is doing the same thing, yet a few miles north of these two, Belmont's having trouble, and then a few miles south, Jay County's having a lot of trouble. Like, how is it possible that all the talent is congregated into this small area, this 10-mile radius around Adams Central and South Adams?
It's literally, 15 minutes between the schools, between Vernon and Monroe? It's crazy. I mean, it's a great point because you have Belmont that's struggling, Jay County is struggling, and meanwhile these two teams, two programs just have a feast of talent. And Adams Central is going to get there. I think the margin between Adams Central and South Adams shrinks a little bit next year, not because South Adams regresses, but Adams Central gets better.
Well, they had to get some guys with some experience this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was kind of a rebuilding year for Adams Central. South Adams taking advantage. But I know South Adams has had success in the recent past in the sectional and beating Adams Central. This is a completely different team because those teams all had multiple losses in the season. I think one year they went 2-7 and won a sectional title. This is a different team. This team has the capability to go undefeated and win a state championship.
The NECC, much like these other conferences, it kind of feels like you've got two teams that are on their way to winning a conference title. You're talking about Eastside in the small school division and West Noble in the big school division. Eastside has Fremont at Fremont this week, and West Noble is at home against Lakeland. What are these two teams doing well, and are you surprised that they are the two teams leading the big and small division? Because I think some people would be surprised at Eastside. I don't know about West Noble, but the gap between West Noble and everybody else, I think, is bigger than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think so. I think people maybe thought Cherubusco was that team to beat in the small school division. You look at what West Noble's been able to do. They had the personnel. We went into the year saying, okay, Josh Gross and Brandon Pruitt and Kyle Mayhorter, all three guys are exceptional football players. but who else was around them, right? Can West Noble be a team or just a group of three guys basically leading the way? And they've been a true team. 6-0 for the first time since 81?
And they've got a great kicking game.
Yeah, they do. I mean, the kid can, nail it from 50, 55, even 60 yards if he has to.
That is a big deal in the playoffs. I will say,
Yeah.
a lot of times you don't think about it because in the regular season you might just beat the crap out of somebody. But man, a lot of games have been won or lost by we have to go for two because we
Yeah.
don't have a kicker, especially when you're talking about that level.
Yeah, or even kickoffs. It's you can consistently put it in the end zone for touchbacks as opposed to risking a long return in a close game that flips the field or gives a team a touchdown or a short field to score in the playoffs in tight games. So definitely a thing that's really helping West Noble. We didn't feel like the drop-off from Angola would be as big as it has been, even though their first 4 games were just brutal. And the defense seems to be getting better for Angola, but West Noble's taken advantage out of with Angola rebuilding to really be the class of that division here in 2019.
Yeah, Angola needed a breather from,
Yeah.
kind of the gauntlet that they played. They needed a get-well game, and now they've kind of started to figure things out. So I imagine they're going to be tougher as the season goes on. But what are you most looking forward to about Week 7? Because the conference races, I don't want to say they're locked up, but
Yeah,
they feel
they're really close,
like they're pretty much locked up. So I feel like we're starting to focus a little bit on how these teams are positioning themselves for runs in the postseason.
No, I agree. That's why you're kind of watching which teams are getting better throughout week in and week out the final 3 weeks of the season. Which teams are turning it around. You look at a team like New Haven. Now all of a sudden they're really scary, winning 2 straight against 2 quality opponents.
I like Jakar Williams, man,
Yeah.
the quarterback. He's
Right?
a good dude. He's got
And
some stuff.
has consistently gotten better. They scored 3 defensive touchdowns last week in a victory, so that defense is really humming along. You look at the SAC, and I still feel Snyder. Maybe a lot of people are overlooking Homestead's rematch with Snyder, inevitably in 6A. It'll probably happen, barring something crazy. That rematch, because I think a lot of people are looking at Homestead in terms of, okay, who could beat them in regional? Look at the potential regional matchup. Snyder hasn't been beaten by the same team twice in a season in a long time. So I think you got to continue to watch Snyder getting better, particularly that defense. And then in the Northeast 8, I think you look at what are some of these other teams that I think can make a run that aren't East Noble. Can a Columbia City, can a DeKalb, can a Leo kind of get some traction in the final third of the year?
All right, we'll have it all covered for you on the Highlight Zone this coming Friday night, and then Justin and I will be back next Monday for Inside the Zone. For Justin, I'm Glenn. We'll see you next week.